We're going to talk about component access. Most of the components we need to work with are underneath the control panel. To take the control panel off, we'll have to remove several screws. We have 3 along the panel inside of the oven cavity, and then 2 screws along either side of the control panel. We'll take those off now. These screws are a little difficult to see because they are recessed into the panel. Production screws will be brought out to flush with the panel. After taking out the 7 screws around the perimeter and the 8 screws holding in the 4 knob skirts, the control panel is ready to come down. Once the control panel is lowered down, you can see we now have access to all the burner valves. We also have access to the spark module and the light switch. Disconnecting all the wires from the spark module and light switch, we can now take off the control panel. Once the control panel is out of the way, we can try to remove one of the burner valves. There is an 8mm nut holding the valve to the manifold pipe. Remove that nut. After disconnecting the wiring, you can remove the valve. Now that we have the valve off, each one of the valves come off the same way, including the rotisserie valve. The burner igniters are accessible, but we need to take off the inner cover. There is 1 igniter for each burner. Each one is accessible from underneath the inner cover. We take out 4 screws to remove the panel. After the 4 screws are gone, we can pull the panel down. You can now see the mounting positions of the igniters. There is 1 nut to secure the igniter on the front side of the panel and 1 nut on the oven side of the panel. Remove the nut and lock washer from inside the oven cavity. The igniter on the other side of the bulkhead in the actual inner oven is covered by a grounding cover. 2 screws mount that grounding cover that we need to take off before we can take out the igniter nut and remove the igniter from the front of the unit. This is the grounding cover. The igniter is held in by a nut. You will need a 11/16 open-end wrench to remove the nut and lock washer. Now you can pull the igniter through. We're going to take off the igniter and thermocouple cover which is held in by 3 screws. We can now pull the cover down, and 2 screws hold the igniter and the thermocoupler onto the cover. We take those out. There is one more screw to hold in the igniter, and a 1/2-inch nut holding the thermocoupler. After you have the pieces removed as shown, you will need to disconnect the thermocoupler from the burner valve and the igniter from the spark module.